What time is it? Ah. Did it work? Is more stay here? Are the time here? Are they gonna sing Jungle Love?
Yeah, they're coming.
They're not here, are they?
Yeah.
We want to do a show?
Yeah.
That's right. Welcome back to another episode of your favorite musical-based internet TV show. It's Three Dudes in a Record Store. I am your host, Greg Horn, as always, joined by our wonderful man who wears so many hats, our cameraman, our director, our choreographer. He not only fights as good as Van Damme, he dances as good as him too. Talking about Jason, the Metal Maniac, and my partner in crime, the man to my right.
What's up, man?
Big B. What's up, homie?
We're back.
We're back, right?
Yep. I'm excited about this one.
I'm super excited about this. Before we get into our excitement and a little bit of our process, we have another passing in the metal community. Cliff Burton's father
That is
recently
right.
passed away.
Indeed.
Any thoughts?
Cliff is a hero to all of us metalheads.
Legend. Dude was a
Super
legend.
legend.
Trauma.
I don't know much
He
about
was
his
in the
dad,
band
but
Trauma before. His dad seemed to
That's
be a
true.
really cool,
it
like,
seemed like his dad loved him.
yeah, like kept the metal fire going until I think he was in his 90s. So
He was up there.
Dude was a legend,
Yeah.
as well as his son.
Saw a cool picture of him.
Doing the
Same
yeah,
rings-
right.
Same rings as Cliff.
Super,
Representing.
super cool, holding it down for the Bay Area. Super excited.
How many years has
so
it been since we
happy.
lost Cliff?
We were in high school, right? I remember if you come down to the shop
I wasn't in high school.
and you look around and you look in the corners and the nooks and crannies of this place, you will find Metal Edge magazine. We didn't have the internet growing up. The only way you got your information was Cream, Hit Parader, Rip Magazine, Metal's Edge, all these things.
Circus.
Circus.
Correct.
That's how I
Yeah.
learned. I think it
read
was
all those.
86-ish, 85-ish. I think it was like my freshman year in high
Yeah.
school.
Man.
That long ago.
I was probably in 6th or 7th grade when Cliff passed. I was just starting out with the metal.
Yeah, rough. It was rough.
I had to wait till the right people told me what was up.
Well, you know, that's an episode.
I was a
That's
kid
an
at a
episode.
Catholic school.
That's a show.
Yeah.
Who introduced you? The top introductions. That's
I
gonna
think
be a
you
good
can
one,
do that. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Excited about this week's episode.
I'm
Maybe
really excited.
one of this week's episodes. We got to get this out of the way because if I don't stop nitpicking this list, I'm gonna drive myself crazy. I think I could have had
Yeah.
100.
Exactly. We were supposed to do top 5, but I convinced Greg that we had to do top 10 because once we got rolling with it,
There's too many. Yeah, the things I left off, even the honorable mentions,
Yeah.
are pretty immense.
I know. I think once we get into our list, people will they'll understand. They'll start
Yes.
thinking about the same thing.
We are going to do today's epic is going to be top 10 movies where music is an integral part, yet it is not a musical. And I took mine to another level where I tried to not do concert-based films or documentaries. I think I only have one documentary on the list.
All right. Well, I guess a little spoiler is I might have broken that.
Well, that wasn't
A
a
little
thing.
bit,
it was just
but
my
yeah.
own.
Yeah.
I like to
there's a
make
reason
everything
why I picked
harder
what I
than it
picked.
has to be.
Exactly.
I
But
can't-
there's a few that I felt like, and I'll explain why. But you know.
Well, why don't we get into our honorable mentions? We won't
Alright.
even waste any
Alright.
more time. We'll go into our honorable mentions. I'll read the Metal Maniacs top
Yeah, we
5.
have to include the Metal Maniac.
Then
So-
we'll go into our top 10, right? So for me, I went heavy honorable mentions. I'm like 10 honorable mentions. So I'm not going to do a deep dive into each one, but we'll talk about them a little bit. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, right?
Yeah.
They form a band, they save the world, everything's great.
Exactly.
What else do I have here? I got the X record because I don't
Yeah.
want you to see
Yeah.
what's behind my
Yeah,
curtain.
I'm hiding mine in a box here.
Last American Virgin. I will talk a little bit about this one. I struggled to get it into the top 10, but it was actually a remake. The same director actually based it off the film he made in Israel. And you can tell it's a foreign director because the end of this movie will tear your heart out of your chest. And musically, it's very driven by the sounds of the day, but the very last song is a James Ingram song. And every time you hear that song for the rest of your life, you will think about the end of this film. Brutal.
Not sure.
Went CB4.
Okay.
Right?
Straight out
like a little. I think Rick Ross watched this very film before he stole the persona that he used to rap. Rick Ross, for those of you not know, Rick Ross was a correctional officer in the state of Georgia before he stole the persona of Freeway Ricky Ross, who was a drug dealer from LA that was in prison, and made a rap career for himself. But he's a giant fake and garbage human being. So watch this instead of listening to Rick Ross. I come with controversial takes. I don't have a copy of this next film, which is why it's on my honorable mentions, because it's one of the holy grails of my collection, and I can't find it anywhere for under like $200 on Blu-ray. The animated film from 1983, Rock and Rule. It was a staple of old school HBO, like a post-apocalyptic animals that play music, and a guy wants to use Debbie Harry's voice to raise a demon.
Okay.
It's awesome.
Okay.
Gotta watch it. It would be completely over the top, Alanis Morissette ironic, if I did not include High Fidelity on my list. Right? It's about a guy in a record store. Great book. Awesome movie. Can't wait to watch what they do with the remake with Zoe Kravitz, whose mother is in this film.
Lisa Bonet.
Can't wait to watch that. This movie is exactly why studios should let filmmakers make films and they just foot the bill and not worry about it. Colt, Empire Records.
Exactly.
They meddled with this movie so much that it just kind of. You see the everything they were trying to do. It would have been awesome. But I still love it.
Very 90s.
Very 90s.
Set in a record store.
Set in a record store again.
One of the things about this is it's kind of the record store of the 90s as a relic. When you'd have record label people come to the store to promote artists and things like that.
And not only that, it's an independent record store trying to stay away from being bought out by big, ugly business.
How many of those actors are doing anything today?
Liv Tyler, Renee Zellweger.
Yeah, I guess Renee Zellweger.
Robin Tunney, who was in The Craft.
Ethan Embry's just
Ethan
gone.
Embry.
He disappeared.
Let's see what comes. I got my handy dandy book of notes from the year 2000. Almost Famous.
Is this an honorable mention?
It is an honorable mention.
I approve.
This is a movie about a fictional band called Stillwater, based on the life of the writer Cameron Crowe, where he was a kid and he got a gig writing for Rolling Stone, and they didn't know he was a kid.
Yeah.
The bands that he interviewed in real life are a Murderer's Row of epic talent. Great movie. I cannot have a list ever about anything potentially that doesn't involve Kiss. Kiss meets the Phantom of the Park.
Nice.
1979 made-for-TV movie.
That's included in this.
It's included in this. So if you are out there in wherever you're watching this, however you're consuming this, and you have Volume 3 and you want to hook a brother up, send it to me.
There's probably a Facebook trading group or something you could find him on there.
I just want someone to give it to me because they love this show so much. But it's on this. It's amazingly cheesy. I love it. It was one of those dominoes that started the destruction of this band. But it is what it is. There's Dreamer, Deceiver, and Heavy Metal Parking Lot. Those are both kind of crammed into one. They're both about Judas Priest.
Both documentaries.
Both documentaries, which is why I kept them off my list.
All right.
The Heavy Metal Parking Lot is an absolute like hilarious 20-minute snapshot of a concert, a Judas Priest Dokken concert in like Illinois, and they were. It's hilarious. You have to watch it to know how funny.
There
this
was
movie
people
is.
in the parking lot waiting for this show that
and they filmed
they could have answered a casting call.
It's
I
a
mean,
wonderful
they
snapshot
found
of
some legit
80s
characters.
America. I love it.
Oh yeah.
Dream Deceivers, real quick, is a documentary that has ties to Jason and I. It's about the Judas Priest trial where they put backwards messages on their records. That was a thing in the 80s. People were terrified.
It was after a tragedy.
A tragedy. Well, we won't go too deep. I want you to watch the doc. It's a brilliant documentary. I want you to watch it. I don't want to go too deep
essentially
into it.
sued for
They were sued.
causing this because there was a belief that backwards messages on their record had
Now I'm going to
influenced.
explain the tie with Jason and I, the Metal Maniac. So this trial was held in Reno. The lawyer for Judas Priest was the aunt of our classmate. Shout out to Megan Pasillo. Her mother's sister was their lawyer. I begged this girl for days to get me autographs. I have no Judas Priest autographs.
Shout out to Megan Pasillo.
Shout out to Megan Pasillo, right? And I got rid of, I don't know where I put my last but not least on my honorable mentions. It almost cracked into the top, but it's Purple Rain.
Yes. Yes.
I don't know what can be said about Purple Rain that hasn't been said a million times. It's It was him, his vision for that, what that album meant to him, the kind of autobiographical nature of all that came with it. It was
I don't know exactly what Prince was thinking, but that certainly was a big promotion on his career at that time. I mean,
kind of unheard of to be that. Not that he was early in his career, but he hadn't blown up yet, and then he puts out an album and a movie, all kind of
blew up huge on that.
It's
still
2020, and that is still a brilliant album and a brilliant movie. So those are my honorable mention list.
Now we got to shout out Jason's picks.
No, you go ahead and do your honorable mentions, and then we'll shout out Jason's picks.
Okay. Well, I also have Almost Famous on my honorable mentions list, so I don't even need to talk about that much. But
see, you need to upgrade to that has the Stillwater CD on it.
That is true. I actually used to have the soundtrack to that on
of course
vinyl
you did.
that had.
Why did I even?
But it was worth a lot of money, so I sold it. So,
we all gotta do what we gotta do.
Just a great film. I watch this film regularly. It's got a lot of emotion in it. I think this one, I didn't want to put it on my top, but Yellow Submarine, you want a movie that's based around music, animated film from 1969, I believe, somewhere around there. 68, sorry. We watched this as kids. Everybody loves that.
I'm not a giant Beatles fan, so I don't really.
You can stop right now.
Oh, really, Man of War? We're gonna go there?
Hey, if we're going to debate Man of War and you don't like the Beatles.
I mean,
come on.
Take them.
I absolutely love this movie, Rockstar with Mark Wahlberg. It's about the lead singer of a band who imitates another famous band. And then he gets to be the lead singer of that famous
Judas
band.
Priest.
Kind of, yeah.
They took it from. Yeah. And then they didn't want to do it.
I think Priest's story influences this for sure.
Heavily.
Yeah. So he leaves the imitation band and becomes the lead singer of the real famous band, and
with the real musicians are in this movie. A shorn Zakk Wylde, if you know anything about
Jason Bonham,
Black Label
John
Society.
Bonham's son on drums in the band.
Jeff Pilson.
Glad you didn't leave that out from Dokken. Mark
and
Wahlberg.
Foreigner.
Yeah,
He's in Foreigner.
that's
now.
true. That's true. Mark Wahlberg is brilliant. in
Timothy
this.
Oliphant, for those
That's right.
Oliphant
That's
fans,
right.
I love
dig
that guy.
him.
He's awesome in everything.
Okay, I'll kind of just. I brought High Fidelity too.
Yeah.
'Cause I own a record store. Can't leave that out.
Love it. We're
great story.
right on the same, almost on the same page.
And then this one,
Ooh,
documentary, Dogtown and Z-Boys.
I love that movie.
I know you love it. The music is very much a part of this story.
Yeah,
here.
it's intertwined. You can't have one without
These
the
kids
other.
at this time, if they weren't listening to this music, it's possible that
I don't know
their
that
whole
they
phenomenon
get.
might not have happened.
I think they get credit, but I mean, do they really get enough credit for how revolutionary they were?
I think
Stacy Peralta.
I think they
is
need
just-
more credit. I mean, Bones Brigade came after that and really kind of
Tony Hawk, the
took
legend.
skateboarding to where it is today, but that wouldn't have happened
And
without
it's-
the
there's
Zephyr
some-
skate team in the Santa Monica area.
There's some hard living fellas in there.
These
that-
were
that
kids
didn't
who
quite.
were obsessed with surfing, and when they couldn't surf,
Yeah.
they went to the concrete, and they were listening to Black Sabbath and Deep Purple.
They made a movie out of it too. That's not that. That's pretty alright.
I dig the movie. I dig
Emil
the movie.
Hirsch.
You should
I
certainly
think
see
he's in it.
this before
Yes,
seeing that
100%.
movie. But they did a pretty good job with that. So anyway, those
Those are yours.
yeah.
Those are good.
I kept it
picks.
short and
Those are
sweet.
good picks. You like to do
I thought
that.
they were.
I
I
like
thought they were
to
good picks.
overthink
Yours are pretty good.
everything. So we're gonna go. We let the Metal Maniac bring 5. We didn't tell him we upped it to 10. I kind of wanted to see where his mind was at. He behind the curtain a little bit. We set out a topic and then we don't talk about it.
Yeah.
We refused. I don't want to know. We don't want to be influenced by each other's list. We did the same thing for the Metal Maniac. So we're gonna go over his list real quick. At number 5, he's got Spinal Tap. Brilliant film.
Yep.
Number 4, one of my absolute favorite films,
Interesting.
Vision
Interesting
Quest.
pick. I like that.
Number 3, again, loving it, Maximum
okay.
Overdrive.
Yeah.
Awesome.
AC/DC is a big part of that.
2,
so,
I almost put this on my list. I was so close. I'm glad that the Maniac
yeah.
hooked it. Is Fast Times at Ridgemont High. The way that they blend that soundtrack in throughout that
Yes,
film
yes.
to hit
So
critical
iconic
moments.
of the '80s.
The Cars. If you know the scene I'm talking about,
Yeah.
you know why that Cars, it's Pavlov's dog with me in that song, for the Cars. And his number 1, which
I
is
like
why
this,
I think I
dude.
left it off my list,
I
because I
like that.
know the Maniac was going to hit it. The Lost Boys. Amazing vampire flick from the 80s, a coming of age tale, a great soundtrack.
Soundtrack's excellent.
It's a,
Anytime I ever get that
wonderful movie.
soundtrack on vinyl or CD, it
It's
flies
gone.
out of here.
I love that movie so
It's
much.
iconic.
I love that movie so much. I have both sequels and watched them.
It's
They're
iconic.
not that bad. Amazing list by the Maniac.
Right
We
on.
have a
Thanks,
a
Jason.
high bar to be. If he would have set the bar low, I'd have felt like I could have cruised right in. But now I gotta bring
Yeah,
it.
your stuff's gonna pale in comparison.
It will.
to this
It
one.
will.
Yeah.
The only real documentary I brought in, I don't actually have a physical copy of, but what I do have is the movie that was made after the documentaries were made.
Okay.
This is West of Memphis. This is a documentary by The Hobbit.
Peter Jackson.
Peter
says
Jackson
right on
is
front.
the executive producer, but the movie I'm talking about is called Paradise Lost, the child murders at the Robin Hood Hills, and it was about 3 kids in West Memphis that were accused of murdering 2 other boys
Mhm.
in a particularly brutal fashion. It
Right.
wasn't just they strangled some kids, like they cut these kids
Yeah,
up. It
yeah.
was, there's so many, it's a really brilliant documentary. There are 3 of them. They kept making them, and this case got more and more in the mainstream as it went along.
And how does the music play into it?
The music plays into it because the very first documentary, the one that I'm talking about, Paradise Lost, they reached out, the makers of the documentary who went on to make Hoop Dreams and a documentary called Stevie and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
They reached out to Metallica to license their music to use as the soundtrack. Metallica had never allowed their music to be used for anything.
Yeah.
They gave them their
Okay.
music because one of the hinge points of this case was they were metalheads. They were kids like us,
Yeah.
fringy kids on kind of the outside, wearing black and metal and listening to all the stuff we were listening to. And it scared the people around them so much
Yeah.
that they basically pin these murders on these kids.
Wow.
It's an amazing,
Wow.
amazing case. And
So the soundtrack to
the
Paradise
soundtrack
Lost
to
is all
Paradise is
Metallica.
all Metallica, early
Why I
Metallica.
haven't seen this film, I don't know.
I have no idea. You gotta get on it.
You have a lot of stuff I'm not hip to, man.
I dig.
I'm gonna have to start.
For those not in the know, and I understand that we're just two old dudes that kind of just shove our opinion in your face, and we appreciate the fact that you allow us and that you watch this. But this isn't just off the cuff. We do a lot of research. I put in a good full day just deep diving
Wow.
my collection, the internet, books, just to kind of make sure I'm on all
He's working
cylinders.
hard for this show.
Working hard for the money. Me
He's
and
working
Donna
hard
Summer.
for it. All right, so we're trading off.
Yeah, we're trading off
All
number
right,
10.
We'll see if I can do this justice here. This is one of my favorite films of all time. It's from 1986 and is directed by Jonathan Demme, who may or may not come back up again in this conversation. Something Wild, Melanie Griffith and Jeff Daniels, but what I think absolutely makes this film is a early performance by Ray Liotta. It's
Yeah,
mesmerizing
he was like
in
a
this
thug.
film. He's a jilted ex-boyfriend, and he's just mesmerizing. If you want to be scared by someone not in a horror film, but in kind of a psychological thriller almost, Ray Liotta's performance is top-notch. But anyway, the reason I picked this is because it has a popular soundtrack that's been out since the movie came out. Features kind of new wavy reggae. Sister Carol's featured in the film, and the music just kind of sets the backdrop. It's not taking over the film, but it's an important kind of backdrop to the time and place they're in. Great film. If you haven't seen it.
I have a kind of a twofer, but I'm not going to expand on both films. I'm just going to really talk about one. I don't own a copy of Breakin', which is got a Jean-Claude Van Damme cameo as a dancer
It does
in
indeed.
it. But I do have Beat Street.
Apparently in Breakin' there's even a cameo of someone who used to be a Eureka native.
Really? Do
Well,
tell.
maybe not a native, because I think they lived down there at the time when they were young, but they lived up here for years and years. Yeah. They just claim they were in that same scene that Van Damme is in down
Well,
at
who
Venice
now? I
Beach.
gotta watch.
They don't need to mention
All
it.
right.
Stupid trivia.
The reason why they're kind of lumped together is they're kind of about the same thing.
You gotta love them.
Canon actually put out Breakin', and they heard that Beat Street was getting made, so they rushed Breakin' to the theater. So it was actually the first one, but this is actually the better film, more in depth into the hip hop New
Well,
York
Okay.
scene.
Yeah, you're right about that. And
I'm not saying Breakin' is bad. I'm just saying this is the superior.
And Beat
movie.
Street should have come out first because it takes place in New York City.
The-
whereas
the-
Breakin'
the-
is in Los
The
Angeles.
home of hip hop.
Exactly.
You gotta respect where the
Yeah.
epicenter of the movement
Exactly.
was. Great movie. Ray Don Chong is in it.
Can't beat Ray Don Chong.
You can't. She was a looker. It's a really good film, but a really great soundtrack with the music is driving the action and the elements of where they are in their lives, and that wanting to break out and do something huge and be creative and all this stuff.
It's about
really
the
awesome
whole
movie.
culture of hip hop.
Yeah.
It's a very meaningful film for me as well.
Good. I'm glad.
Yeah.
Will we see it on your list? Don't tell me.
All right. This is a hugely influential film for me. It's not exactly a documentary, but it's not a storyline film, but it is a film. It's theatrical. It was released in theaters. It's called Erg, A Music War. And on the front you see Lux Interior from the Cramps, which happens to be one of the greatest moments in the film. This movie came out in 1981, and Stuart Copeland from The Police and his brother Miles Copeland, I believe.
IRS Records.
IRS Records. They were the ones who basically put this together. They got some other producers and stuff, but basically they put on about 4 concerts, a couple in the US and a couple in the UK around the same time, and they were festival concerts. They filmed it all, picked one performance from each of 37 bands of the kind of punk, post-punk, and new wave movement going on. So like it says on the front here, you got the Police, you got the Go-Go's, you got Joan Jett, Oingo Boingo, X. There's also the Cramps, Dead Kennedys, Devo, Echo and the Bunnymen, Wall of Voodoo. So when I was
everybody that was anybody in that kind of like
pretty much
not super relevant
hardcore
pop,
punk,
but it's kind of in that punkish.
yeah, not hardcore punk. It's got Gang of Four, kind of a post-punk vibe. So when I was 16 years old, I was already into some of these bands, but this was an eye-opener to me. Bands I'd never heard of, and it was a window into something I had no access to otherwise, and I watched it over and over and over again. So if you've never seen Erg, A Music War, it is a little hard to find.
I haven't seen it.
It is a little hard to find.
My interest is piqued.
Look for it.
My next pick, number 8 on our list, is maybe kind of a stretch. Maybe. Alex Cox, Repo Man.
That's not a stretch at all.
It's not. This movie might not exactly be about music, but it's music. You can't take the music away from the film and still have a movie. He is an LA punk kid into punk music who happens into Harry Dean Stanton's character and becomes a repo man.
Yes.
I don't want to give away too much of the plot if you haven't seen it. You should have seen it by now,
Yeah,
but if you haven't.
Everyone should see this film.
It's I'm going to go out on a limb and say some of what Pulp Fiction did, this movie did first. In line of the briefcase. You never see what's in the briefcase,
right.
You just see a glow. If he didn't steal that from this movie, where did he get it from? Because that's what they do in this film.
Yeah.
This is a really, really great film from the era. Really great punk soundtrack with all the hitting all the
think
cylinders.
you're leaving out a key factor as to why this is perfect for your list, because it also had a soundtrack that was released at that time, and punkers, new wavers, anybody that loves this movie, they identify that soundtrack with the film.
Yeah, they pair off. This was in the age where, this was 84, so you were having that slight disconnect between punkers and metalheads. They weren't quite, the crossover revolution hadn't quite begun, so this was
true.
a very scene-specific film, but a movie that I absolutely love.
Give a shout out to Emilio Estevez, because that's one of his most
One of the producers on this movie was Michael Nesmith, who you might know from The Monkees.
Mr. Fax over here.
Right? I'm bringing it.
That.
Bringing it. I'm trying not to have my wall separate so you see what's next on my.
Yeah, you can't see my stuff.
I can. I'm not looking at it either. I'm not cheating.
All right, this one. I had to throw this in here from 2003, Lost in Translation. It might not seem like it's a movie where the music is that important to it, but it really is. For one thing, the score to the film was done by Kevin Shields, who is the guitarist and mastermind behind the sort of psychedelic shoegaze Brit band My Bloody Valentine. There's also some My Bloody Valentine material in the movie. There's a track by Peaches. The movie closes with a song by Jesus and Mary Chain.
Love that band too.
Yeah. But the reason I picked this is because the music by Kevin Shields and some of the other songs chosen to be in this film, they really apply to the mood, which the majority of it is set in Tokyo in the nighttime. And there's lights and commotion and so much nightlife activity going on, but yet the music is this almost kind of wistful, melancholic, somnambulistic kind of feel. And I don't think this movie would feel the same without that music. So that's my number 3 pick.
Friend of the show and principal of St. Bernard's, Paul Shanahan, who the Maniac and I went to school with, I told him of my dreams, my plans. I have a giant 5 foot by 5 foot map of Japan on my bedroom wall, and I meticulously plan out my trip to Japan.
You said a giant 5 foot thing. I was not sure where that was going then.
And Paul immediately said, "Oh man, you need to see Lost in Translation," because I've never watched it. I'm not. I just didn't think it would kind of strike a chord with me, so I kind of
struck a major chord with me.
Now I need to see it.
Bill Murray, and Scarlett Johansson, right there. Yeah,
that's not. No.
Okay. All right.
No.
But
I love Bill Murray, but he's got to be like, I'm sorry,
he's
Bill.
Brilliant in
sorry,
that
Bill.
Film. He's brilliant in that film.
I want Meatballs, Bill Murray.
Okay.
You know, I want Stripes, Bill Murray.
You can have those.
I want original Ghostbusters.
I like Groundhog's Day, Bill Murray.
I always thought that they should put out Groundhog's Day exactly the same film and then call it Groundhog Day 2 and not tell anybody. And people would be like, what? Really? I thought that would be.
I don't know why you're not rich.
I don't know why I'm not rich. If I did, I could. All the things I could do. Make really goofy intros to web TV shows and make a movie that's already being made. Number 7. Now we're really getting into it.
Yeah, see, you're counting the opposite way. I screwed that up.
Well, that's okay.
I made my top number 10, but that's just because of the way I wrote my notes.
It's okay because, I didn't even bring a copy of my number 7, so you gotta imagine it.
Oh, okay. Maybe I have it.
We've already had this actor on our lists. John Cusack did a film, Grosse Pointe Blank.
Oh man!
2 soundtracks came out to that movie. Both amazing. A little bit of ska, a little bit of punk, a little bit of two-tone, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But the gist of the film is very music-driven in the way that he's an assassin that goes back to his hometown to go to his high school reunion and kind of touch bases with the older version of himself. The love of his life is a DJ at a radio station. It's a wonderful film. Music is
it's a great
just
film.
In it. I love one of my favorite scenes. Speaking of the music, where they're playing with the levels of volume and intensity of the music it's like a playful. Steve Pink, I believe, is the director. He took a Motorhead song. So John Cusack trains with Benny the Jet Urquidez. If you know anything about fighting, you know how much of a bad dude that guy is. They've been friends for years. I think since the Say Anything days. And they train together. He's got him in this movie. Yeah, he was a kickboxer. I believe he was a judoka as well. But they're fighting in this convenience store. And the kid who's behind the counter at the convenience store's got his headphones on and he's listening to Motorhead. So the interplay between him playing this video game and Motorhead just blasting in your ears to them fighting and the sounds of them fighting and the song kind of taking a back seat to how that interplays and
when
how
it
it
cuts
plays
to the
out.
kid, the song is loud.
Yes,
And then it cuts
it's a
away.
brilliant scene. I don't think the movie gets enough
I
love.
thought about picking that film as well as Say Anything because I felt I think when John Cusack was involved in a film like that, I think he had some influence in the film. I think he brought his musical taste into those films. And so that was
a lot
one
of
of the
his
reasons I
movies
wanted
are
to
like,
pick either one of those.
he's just awesome.
He really is.
I like him.
He really
Seems
is.
like a dude that you could just kind of sit down and chill with and have a
Yeah, hopefully he's not a dick or
have a
something.
beverage and just be like, tell me about this.
Yeah, I would think so. Unless maybe he's totally Hollywood and
Let's say he isn't. And his sister, he puts his sister in all his movies,
Yeah.
which is a fun little Easter egg. And she's a scene stealer in this.
she's a
So
scene
she-
stealer in most of
she's
the
awesome.
movies she's in. And she might come up again in this.
Oh, look at that!
conversation
Look
here.
at that!
All right. So this one, I'm excited because
I love it.
I don't know if you
You're
brought
excited.
this one, but Greg and I both love this film. And this is from 1984, kind of a big year in my life. Streets of Fire. To me, one of the greatest cult films ever. I'd put it in the cult film category because I don't think it'll ever get bigger than that. But it's the kind of movie you'd see on late night TV in the 80s. You know, same time you'd see a film like The Warriors, Class of 1984, stuff like that. The score to this film is done by Ry Cooder, who's done quite a few other film scores. So right there you got a connection, a well-known musician doing the score to this film. But music really is part of the storyline of this movie. One of the main characters, played by Diane Lane, is a pop star. And I don't want to spoil the plot of the film, but in the 80s, I don't know if you remember this much, but there was kind of a revival of the 50s. You know how decades bring back the 90s, or it's kind of a 60s revival. So the way they turn kind of new wave pop into this sort of reimagining of the 50s.
Another place,
Yeah,
another time.
Exactly. And then you've got elements of rockabilly and doo-wop throughout the film. And then another key ingredient is in one of the places that part of the film takes place, it's a really rowdy nightclub in a really rowdy part of the city. And the house band playing at that time is the Blasters. And the song that they show the Blasters playing is like one of their most ripping, kind of modern rockabilly. So you kind of have this 50s greaser element, this 80s glam pop element, with kind of a story based on a hero comes back to town to save the day storyline. So if you've never seen Streets of Fire, this guy's not going to argue with me
I'm
about
not
that.
familiar.
Right.
I don't think
yeah.
I've ever seen
Yeah.
it. It sounds pretty alright. I mean,
Yeah.
the guy
You were
made The
lying.
Warriors?
You were lying when we talked about our love of this film, I guess.
Maybe. You might see it.
Okay.
I don't want to give away too much. I'm not going to say anything. But there's a possibility. There's a possibility. I know, for one, that before we started filming, the movie that the Maniac was talking about was that movie.
Oh yeah.
So that's the one he left off, hoping that I would put it on
yeah.
my list.
Okay. That was.
You might
I
see
got
it. You might see it.
Well, at first I thought you were talking about me.
As much as I prepare for this show, I apparently do not prepare enough because I left another movie at home in my vast collection of films.
It's probably because your stuff is too organized.
It is, right?
It's like the forest for the trees.
I have that, it's that military
It's there, but you
part
can't
of
see
me
it.
that has to be completely organized. We're going back to 1990. Again, a kid on kind of the fringe, doesn't have any friends, goes to a giant high school. Parents buy him this setup. He starts a pirate radio show. Pump up the volume. Christian Slater was in a couple movies I absolutely love that I don't believe they get enough credit. This is one.
Yeah,
Gleaming the Cube is another awesome movie. Talk about skateboarding legends in that film. But Pump Up the Volume, the alternative soundtrack, again, weaves its way through the important moments of that film.
Oh, yeah.
And him being the pirate radio and playing all the things you wouldn't hear on the, Cookie Puss and from
Oh, man. Anarchy
Burger, all the stuff
You
that
wouldn't
he's
have
playing.
you wouldn't have
Samantha.
that storyline without the music.
You couldn't. It's impossible. He couldn't just open a pirate radio thing and then play the Bangles.
I suppose he could have been doing like some Rush Limbaugh talk show kind of thing or something, but
Yeah. Well, it is Arizona.
he
It's a
he definitely was
great
not doing
movie. It's got some really cool cameos in it. Dweezil's brother Ahmet, I believe, is in it.
Okay.
I think Moon Zappa is in it as well. The dad from Teen Wolf is the FCC guy.
Yeah.
We just got a lot of really cool. It's just a really fun movie. The soundtrack is amazing.
I don't think you could guess how many times I watched that movie when it came out.
It's worth the price of admission alone for Concrete Blonde's version of Everybody Knows. So just a brilliant cover.
That's a good little drop right there. Yeah.
Little nugget.
Forgot about
little tiny.
Everybody Knows, which is a classic Leonard Cohen song. That is a good rendition of that song.
Okay.
All right. Here's another one, kind of like one I talked about already. It's not a storyline based movie. Kind of almost has a storyline, but it's another film directed by Jonathan Demme, and it's considered one of the greatest concert films of all time. Stop Making Sense by Talking Heads. You're probably gonna say you don't like the Talking Heads. I can see it on your
Who is
face.
that? Who would that person be? Tina Weymouth is a beast on the bass.
Indeed. This was hugely influential to me. I even have to say my parents turned me on to Talking Heads. They got into them in the early to mid 80s. So when we first got a VCR, this was one of the early things we rented, and I just watched it over and over and over again. It was just spellbinding to me. I won't go into too much about it. You've either seen it, or if you haven't seen it, you should definitely watch it if you love music. I had never seen it on the big screen up until a few years ago, and I was lucky enough to see a screening at the Eureka Theater. It was actually a pick I suggested, and they brought it. And
Look at you, Mr. Influential.
well, they asked me if I had a suggestion. I said I've always wanted to see
Absolutely.
Stop Making
Don't
Sense.
bring Flash Gordon back. Like, let's watch.
Well, they could do that another time. You could call them up.
Flash Gordon,
Flash
the
Gordon.
movie that didn't make the list that I really wanted to put on there.
So that was my number 5 pick.
If you are adept at the world of social media, you might have seen Jack Black lip syncing Talking Heads Psycho Killer. It's hilarious. Talking
I
Heads
guess
are
I'm
great.
not adept at the internet. I don't think I've seen it.
I sit behind a counter and look at IDs all day, so I do my
Yeah.
share of surfing the web. I have 4 movies that kind of fit into one category. I'm not going to expand on each one. I'm really only going to talk about one, but I'll show you the ones I have, not the ones I don't have. I'm going to start off with Deathgasm, which is the newest film on this.
Okay.
Kind of fits into that thing, but Black Roses
Okay.
and Trick or Treat,
Yeah.
and then The Gate would be here if I
Okay.
had it, but it's kind
I
of
don't know the
expensive. I
gate.
don't have
These
it.
two.
It's
these
all
two
kind of the
definitely
same
go
thing.
together.
It's
Yeah.
the '80s satanic panic. It's the records are going to bring demons forth. The
Yeah.
backwards messages
Yeah.
on the albums. I really kind of just want to get into this movie right here. This is a slice of Canadian cheese that I just absolutely love. This might as well be a movie that's solely put out to shove Lizzie Borden's
Oh,
Me Against the
man.
World, straight down your throat. And it is so much. But for those of you not in the know, it's a rock band, a metal band, comes to small town anywhere
Yeah.
and influences the kids to do nefarious deeds. It's an amazing encapsulation of
Yeah.
the 80s, of the satanic, oh my god, our kids are going to get possessed by the devil.
And I think the band looks like a normal
Yeah,
heavy
they
metal
look
band
like
until
a
they're about
straight
to
up, yeah.
put a
And
But-
I don't dislike movies now. I mean, I'm a cinephile, but I love the older 80s films because of the use of practical effects.
yeah.
And they really had to be creative with how they do stuff. And one of the guys from The Sopranos is in it, in
Wow.
the early stage of his career. One of the guys from My Bloody Valentine is in it, if you love that Canadian slasher.
Yeah.
It's a great movie, a great snapshot of the era it was
It's-
from. The Gate is also awesome as well. Stephen Dorff when he's a kid.
Oh, uh-huh. They're
A big dose of 80s metal on the soundtrack. The soundtrack is another white whale of mine. You're going to pay about $200.
It is very hard to find.
I found one on
Trick
the
or Treat's
cheap.
a bit easier to find.
I found one on the cheap, and it
Black
was
Roses. Yeah.
it ended up being a bootleg, so I did
Well,
not buy
mention
it.
who did the music for Trick or Treat.
Trick or Treat was done by Fastway.
Yeah. There you go. We talked about
Awesome.
Fastway.
Gene
before.
Simmons and Ozzy Osbourne do a funny cameo. The main actor in Trick or Treat is the geeky next door neighbor from Family Ties. It's just a hilarious little
For real?
for real. So that was my 5, kind of all in one, kind of
Oh,
that
Skippy.
80s
It
Skippy.
was Skippy.
80s satanic panic, kind
Nice.
of the music
Okay.
is gonna possess
and
our
that counts
kids.
as one.
It's
one
one
selection.
entry, but those movies are kind of similar in
That totally
nature.
works. We'll allow that. We'll allow that.
I just
Sure.
find it funny now that we're living in 2020 where we can look back on the 80s and people really thought, Tipper Gore being one of them, the head of the PMRC, thought that music was going to possess kids into
Yeah.
murdering their parents and worshiping the devil and snorting coke, and
Yeah.
we got the coke thing, but we left
Everything you
everything
didn't
else.
want your kids
Yeah,
to be
it's
doing.
really foolish.
All right, this one. I'm curious if you've seen this movie. It's a movie called Once. It's
Let me peruse.
set in Ireland.
I don't believe I have.
This movie came out in 2007, and it really fits in this list. The reason it's higher on my list is simply because I really like this movie. It's I like emotional, kind of tearjerker, heart-wrenching films, which you probably don't like movies like that. But no, the real reason it's significant here is because the lead actor and musician in this story is played by Glenn Hansard, who was the leader of an Irish alternative rock band called the Frames, who are still around today. And they were coming along in the late 80s, early 90s, I believe. And kind of an interesting story is he auditioned to be in the movie The Commitments, which was about a group of people in Ireland who got together and did kind of a musical review of Motown music. And he got cast as one of those people. He doesn't have a major role in that film, but what was neat was that kind of put a wrench into his band, The Frames, in real life. They had just gotten a record deal. They needed to record and tour for their album. But his band was gracious enough to say, go ahead and do this film and do all the press and see where that takes you. And then after that, he came back to his band. And then also, out of this film, he and his co-star, whose name is Marketa Urgalova.
Yeah,
They-
that rolls right off the
Yeah, it
tongue.
rolls right off the tongue. I had to write it down. They formed a group called Swell Season after this film and started doing some of the music from this movie and some more music they
They're
wrote.
called Swell Season, but that's not a swell name.
Maybe not. But
Not so much.
it's kind of melancholic sort of stuff. Anyway, it's about a guy who wants to be a songwriter and put a band together and record his music, and kind of feels like nobody cares, but then kind of has a moment that is pretty exciting in the culmination of this movie. Anyway, I think everyone should watch once. I think it's a great film, and music is an integral part of it.
Off camera, I'm gonna have to explain my varying reasons of why I think movies like The Commitments are unabashedly racist, and I refuse to watch them. But I mean, I don't want to get
Okay.
into it on
Okay.
camera. But I
Sure.
can see that you're like looking at me like I'm insane.
That's
But
okay.
I'm not.
We can talk about anything you want.
It hurt me to put this movie at 4. I kind of wanted to put it higher, but I really couldn't. It's another one of those movies that might be on the fringe of where the parameters of this topic are, but I couldn't leave it out completely. Barry Gordy's genius kung fu music mashup.
There you go. Yeah.
Last
The
Dragon. Vanity, hello as a disc
Man.
jockey for a video channel, kind of almost like an MTV-ish kind of
Yeah.
a Soul Train kind of thing. Show Nuff, the legendary Julius Carry, the monster performance. He's so funny in this. There's just so much to love about this movie. Set in Brooklyn, I believe,
Yeah.
somewhere in New York, and
Now, is this kind of a spoof on the Bruce Lee Enter the
I
Dragon? type
call
of
it a
film?
loving homage
Yeah.
to, for those of you that don't maybe get into the in-depth stuff as much as my dumb brain does, is the black community really embraced kung fu films and things that were going on in
Right.
like exploitation cinema and grindhouse cinemas, and on a full belly of amazing kung fu flicks, they decided
Yeah.
to kind of do their own homage to kung fu with an 80s soundtrack.
So it's produced by Barry Gordy.
Yeah, he did
You
the
know who he is.
soundtrack.
Who's
he
Barry
did the-
Gordy?
He's a legendary producer of all things.
Motown
He's
record label.
he's
Uh,
right, like side by side with now his name just slipped out of my head. The guy that produced Thriller, Quincy Jones.
yeah.
Those are
So
the
how
heavy
does the
hitters.
music play into this?
And again, it's one of those soundtracks that winds its way through.
Yeah.
The bad guy has a girlfriend who's a pop star that wants to get her music played on this video show that's kind of the hit maker. DeBarge sings a song in this that's played heavily.
Now we know why you love DeBarge.
Right? The very early William H. Macy cameo,
Wow,
that
okay.
for his sweater alone,
Wow.
you gotta see that. Everything about this movie is just amazing. It's,
Again, I honestly don't really know.
and
this
if you
film.
deep dive the meaning behind it, it's one man's pursuit of greatness in a way, but not an ordinary I want to be successful greatness. It's that inner search for peace of where I've worked so hard to do this. What's next?
Yeah.
And falling in love, because who wouldn't fall in love with Vanity? She's
I don't know. That's an unanswerable
amazing.
question, man.
I mean, don't get me started with Action Jackson.
That looks great. I gotta watch that.
You got to watch this. It's again, I wanted it to be so much higher, but when you see my top 3, you're really gonna be like, okay, you couldn't take anything out of the top 3 and then insert that in. So it hit it for
I fully understand. Well, I put this one pretty high. I still got 3 more after this, but I put this one high. Well, I guess I'll try to explain why. The Royal Tenenbaums by Wes Anderson. This film, I couldn't believe it's from 2002. That feels like a lot longer ago than it should be. Reason I picked this, aside from loving this movie, is because Wes Anderson in all of his films features music very prominently. It's part of the feeling of a particular scene in his movies. He picks music that helps establish that mood and emotion, but also visually, cinematically, his films always have this feeling in the set design and the staging of a scene, a feeling kind of like a diorama, and the music kind of fits that dioramic perspective. And there's a song by Elliott Smith that's very important in this in a scene in this film. There's a song by Nico that features very prominently, and a lot of other great tunes. He likes to pick bands like the Rolling Stones and the Kinks and stuff like that to kind of add to the mood. And I picked it because I think his films rely upon the music to get his vision across. So you're looking at me like...
I hate Wes Anderson.
Yeah.
I hate Wes Anderson with the intensity of A Million Suns. I can't stand. He's a pretentious, overblown windbag. I can't stand the visual look of his films. I can't stand his lazy filmmaking. I can't stand anything. I can't stand it.
It's 'cause you
but I love that you love it.
You have a hard heart.
I do have a hard heart,
Yeah.
except for when, like,
It's okay.
The Last Dragon
It's okay.
is on.
It's okay.
I think my list proves I don't have The Last American Virgin. I cry at the end of that movie, bro.
Yeah.
I cry.
Well, I cry in Wes Anderson.
How? He doesn't say anything. He's oh
He
my
does
god,
say-
my
He does say
5-year-old
something. That's what's sad is he doesn't get.
my
what
5-year-old
he's
could
saying
take
in
a
the show.
giant piece of cardboard and color something that I could shoot with my phone that would be better than any Wes Anderson movie ever made.
All right. Well, I think you're missing the point of it.
Here's why Wes Anderson's popular. Somehow he got pictures of somebody doing something they shouldn't do, and then he got all these people that are super famous to be in his movie, so people would think that
No,
Wes Anderson
no.
makes great movies.
You're completely wrong. Let's move on to.
All right.
I'm gonna pull a Ebert on your ass and move on.
Well, that means I'm Cisco, so I'm staying alive, homie. If I'm going
No,
to
he
say,
died first, dude.
I know, but he was a staying alive guy. Like he had the suit from the movie, and his like he. All right, that reference went.
Yeah.
It's all right. If I was gonna say the '90s encapsulated into one film, what would your answer be?
Oh man, you gotta give me a minute.
The grunge era of the '90s encapsulated into
I know
one
where you're
movie.
going with it. Yeah.
Singles.
Yeah.
Sitting in at number 3. So it hits this topic on all cylinders. It's got the grunge soundtrack. I should have really brought the soundtrack and listed that
Yeah, you
those
should
songs on that.
mention some key songs.
On that, like Wood from Alice in Chains. There's Chris Cornell. Seasons is on there. Brilliant version of that song.
Now, who does some?
Paul Westerberg is on there.
Who did some music that was exclusive to this film? Did Chris Cornell write some music for it?
I think he did some stuff for it. The bands are in it. Citizen Dick is the kind of
the fictional
the
band.
fictional band of him, and then Eddie Vedder and I think Chris Cornell was in that band, and then another guy
probably
from
the bassist from
Jeff
Pearl Jam is in
Jeff
it.
Ament.
Yeah,
or
well,
whatever
he's
his
one of the
name is.
guitar players. But,
Yeah. So everything you kind of want. It's got the grunge soundtrack. It's got the hardships of falling in love in a world that's at the beginning of a technological movement and wave of
so the music
video
is really
dating,
used,
if you will.
Yeah, the music is used to set the context.
It really
this time
drives.
and place,
It's not only
Seattle
does
as a
that.
backdrop.
It's critical in it because everything they're doing is music based.
Yeah.
They're going to clubs to see bands. Dylan is in a band
Yeah.
as the leader of Citizen Dick.
It's also
Touch
really,
Me on Dick, which is
it's a play
it's
on
funny.
the Mudhoney song.
But it's a play on the Mudhoney song. Touch Me I'm Sick, which is a brilliant. Mudhoney is brilliant. They're on the
I
soundtrack.
forgot about that.
Screaming Trees.
Yeah.
All the
Important
heavy
bands.
hitters from Seattle.
So-
it's a great time
It's kind of a
lapse
sign
of
of the
that
times.
that time.
Um,
of that
Kind of,
90s. It came out in 92, so really at the not quite the episode, not quite the apex, but we were getting to where the apex of the grunge
Well,
movement
and we were of
was.
the age that those bands were important to us. That scene was happening, and we were gravitating towards that. But the bands themselves were just a little bit older than us, and this reflects kind of that late 20s, early 30s.
I don't want to misspeak, but I believe that in between their lists, this is the third Cameron Crowe film.
Is it?
Yeah, and
What else?
you want to talk about? Well, he definitely did something else. You want to talk about something that's really gonna pull your heartstrings. There's of the vignettes, if you will, of and I think didn't he do High
Almost
Fidelity?
Famous.
You all of these things that he does, he's got this really heart wrenching will they won't they that involves losing a baby, but I don't want to spoiler alert this film, but really go watch this movie. It proves that I do have a heart. I just don't like Wes Anderson. Great movie.
Well,
should watch it.
to be honest with you, I haven't seen that movie since it came out in the theater. Tells you how I felt about it.
Yeah. Be real about it, man. I mean, bring the hatred like I bring it for Wes Anderson.
I really didn't like that film very
You
much.
gotta
I haven't wanted to watch it since.
You gotta revisit.
But I do love almost all of the bands featured in that film. So
there's a bit of.
And I also like Matt Dillon a lot.
There's a bit of. If a movie is really good and it's kind of touching something, you'll be able to see a little bit of yourself or something else in characters that are written to do that. And Matt Dillon's character is kind of one of those clunky, goofy dudes. Doesn't want to kind of admit when he's falling, and then he does sweet little goofy stuff that I'm talking about the rigging the stereo scene, if you know what I'm talking about. But
I don't remember it.
You need to revisit. It's better than you remember.
I will.
And
I will revisit
it's head and
that.
shoulders better than any Wes Anderson
I will
film
revisit it for
ever
you.
made.
That's not true.
That is
But,
true. It is true.
That is totally wrong. We grew up on Matt Dillon, though.
We did.
He's right there with us. All right. I kind of wondered if you would bring this movie. I had to put this movie in there. Music is a central part of this film. Do the Right Thing, Spike Lee, 1989.
I thought about it.
Yeah.
I just got the Criterion collection of this film, brilliant film.
Which is what this is.
Yeah, the new
Oh,
remastered.
the new. Oh, you just got
the new.
Oh, I
The
have
new.
the original Criterion
Yeah.
version. But anyway, you've probably seen this film. If you haven't, it's a heavyweight film. What can you say? I mean, the subject matter, the setting, Brooklyn, New York, during a heat wave.
The hottest day of the summer.
The hottest day of the summer. Tensions between people in this neighborhood.
Radio
start to
Raheem.
flare. Radio Raheem is one of the most important characters. Well, in a way, he's kind of the most important character.
He's
a
almost
catalyst.
the soul of the film.
He's a catalyst character. He's the soul of the story. But this makes the list not just because it's a great film, but the music.
It's another movie where some of the catalyst behind what's going on is a radio show.
That's what I was going to get into.
Yeah.
The thematic music throughout the film is "Fight the Power" by Public Enemy. So, right there. But yes, Samuel L. Jackson, an earlier role of his, somewhat earlier, kind of disguised a little bit. You don't
A little bit. You really don't
see him. He's got sunglasses on the whole time. It's kind of a close up on his face where it's kind of hard to tell it's
Ossie
him.
Davis is the mayor.
Oh man, the mayor. So throughout the film, as the story is unfolding, they're kind of constantly referring back to Sam Jackson in the little radio broadcast booth, and he's kind of almost a narrator. He's kind of aware of his community right there around him, and comments on things or sends messages out to the community. But throughout the film, he's listing off classic African American recording artists that have been hugely influential, hugely important, from blues to jazz to funk and soul, throughout the film. So
kind of the way
music
where
is
I put a lead belly song on my
all right.
page last
Yeah.
night.
So Do the Right
Um,
Thing. Music is
I
a huge part of that
I
film.
think there's so many important things going on in that movie, and obviously that you're going to touch on the race, the way the race plays out in that entire film. And I'm never going to meet people that I find influential, or there's no way that Spike Lee's ever going to sit and watch this waste of an hour of his day. But if I ever got a chance to meet Spike Lee, I think the first thing I did after I shook his hand would be like, I know why Mookie throws the garbage can. I get it. Like, I understand.
Yeah.
So it's really, that's a
I put
really
a lot of thought
hugely
into
important
that
film.
scene.
Very
And
important film.
I don't know if I would be comfortable trying to tell Spike Lee what I believe about that. I would like to hear his thoughts on it, but that is really
I get it.
the
I know.
apex of
I know the
film.
frustration and the anger and not knowing where to release your.
Something had to happen.
Yeah,
At
it was
that
a crucial. That's
Radio
crucial
Raheem was
film.
killed, and something had to happen.
That's just a brilliant movie.
Yeah.
And to
Yeah.
think he made it so early in his career.
He'd done 2 or 3
That is
smaller independent films
insane.
before that. Yeah.
It's like usually you make that
And
movie when you're
Not only
deep
that,
in
but
your
he
career.
stars in it.
Yeah.
He is
he's.
a central character in the film.
Does he get enough credit for Mars Blackman? And really, like, is Nike
That
really
was
got a
huge
lot?
too. Well,
Like, Spike Lee was kind of the face of Nike
he
for a
might tell
while.
you that he doesn't get enough
Him
credit,
and
dude.
Air Jordan.
Yeah.
Spike, if you watch this, I know why Mookie throws the garbage can. There's always room on the Lakers bandwagon. We know the Knicks suck. Come on through, homie. We're getting down to the nitty gritty. Number 2 on my. I'm gonna cover my list a little bit because I don't want
Alright,
you to see what my number 1 is.
I can't see.
Number 2 on my list from 1985. It was a book. I didn't know that till well after, and I read the book, and the book is very touching and heartwarming. All the things you think I'm not. Wes Anderson. Another one of the 80s films where the soundtrack is an integral part of the film. Not only to sell the film and to sell the soundtrack, but the way that the music weaves through the movie and really drives home a point. When someone's working out, something will play. When something heartfelt is going on, something will play. Madonna earlier in her career as a bar band, if you will, Streets of Fire. No, sorry, Vision Quest.
That's
But,
not Streets of Fire.
It's not Streets of Fire. I've never seen Streets of Fire, so I don't know. It's
That's
a
right,
Vision
that's
Quest.
right.
I was thinking about your bar band with Dave Alvin in the Blasters,
I
but
really
Madonna
screwed him
as
up
a
with the Wes Anderson thing.
You did.
Just
You
can't
really
stop
got me out of
thinking
my-
about-
this movie is so for people that are really into film.
I don't
I
know this
didn't
film.
realize
I know both of these actors on the
I
film.
didn't
but
realize that the guy that plays Cooch, his partner that tells him he needs to go on this vision quest to discover who he is the guy from 16 Candles,
Which guy?
Michael Sheffling. He was the main love interest in 16 Candles, the guy that she
Oh,
wants
of
to-
course. Yeah, Jake.
I didn't know that. I was lost, and I was like, "What? They're
Jake's
the
my
same
boy.
guy?" Like, I couldn't
Okay.
believe it. But this is really an exploration of your inner self. I can take a road and just make everything easy and just do what's expected of me, and I'll be all right. Or I can really throw convention into the wind. I can challenge myself to be the absolute best I can be. And I might not succeed, I don't know, but I have to try. And that's what so much of this movie and this book is about.
Okay.
The Journey song alone, Only the Young, is, I mean, just that alone is But if you watch this movie and you're not motivated to do something at the end of it,
Okay.
check your pulse. You might be dead.
That might be my problem. I never watched this movie.
You've never once ever seen.
I know Linda Fiorentino on the front there, Matthew Modine. I don't know why I've never watched that movie. I probably even have it in my collection.
I
Because
I would guess that you
I have
would.
lots of videotapes.
I think there's a
Some I
Blu-ray
haven't watched.
floating out around there somewhere, but it's kind of hard to find. So you can see I've got the out of print snap case, but this film, I can't count as many times as I've watched this movie. I watch it all the time, probably
Yeah.
once a month. It's on, and
That's awesome.
it was one of those movies. I think a lot of these on this list for the older ones, they were the staples of early HBO,
Yeah.
where you would be on 4 times a day.
Man.
You know.
Even later HBO, I would say that's why there's certain movies I've seen like 100
We used to get
times.
you used to get, especially with my first pick,
Like,
you
why
used
have
to
I seen
get,
Spice World
my
100 times?
friend used to get the HBO guide, because we didn't have it, we couldn't afford HBO, and you got the HBO guide, and you'd go through every day and you'd circle the movies that you'd want to watch, and then we were outside kids, so be like, oh man, I think Vision Quest is going to be on, let's go
Go where?
on the Vision Quest.
Oh, I see.
I was, me, the contrarian that I am, you know, would come from an age where you played cops and robbers, or you played cowboys and Indians. I never wanted to be a cowboy. I always wanted to be an Indian.
Yeah.
So his friend being indigenous, native, if you will, and telling him, hey man, you need to go, you need to discover, you need to go on
Yeah.
this journey inside yourself, not.
Sounds like this movie was very influential to
I
you.
love this movie so
Shaped
much.
who you are.
It might have. It might have.
All right. At first, I didn't know how high or low I wanted to put this on my list. Didn't know if it should be in my honorable mentions. But then I kind of realized it's got to be pretty high on my list because I find it endlessly watchable. I never feel like, man, I've watched this movie too many times. My son will watch this movie anytime. And it's all about music. The School of Rock.
Jack Black.
Could argue that that's possibly his greatest role. It's up there. He's had some other iconic roles.
His
role in High
I
Fidelity.
might go High Fidelity.
He's great in that.
He's so amazing
He
in
carries this whole film. Though. High Fidelity. He's a.
But that's where I like my Jack
He's an
Black. I
ensemble
like my
player.
Jack Black
Yeah.
as a side.
But he is perfect in this. And this film is from 2003. Richard Linklater, the director.
Yeah, Dazed and Confused.
Dazed and Confused.
Which I could have put that
Yeah,
again.
that's
That
very,
got completely
very
left.
Music is part of the whole milieu of that movie. So everybody's probably seen this, but if you haven't, his character is kind of a flunky. He's trying to be in a rock band, and they think he's kind of too, I don't know, wild and disheveled for them, not serious enough or something. And he surreptitiously gets a substitute teaching job at a prep school and uses that opportunity to put together his own band out of the kids in this class.
Do we have this movie to thank for iCarly?
Possibly. I love iCarly, by the way.
Right?
I feel
iCarly
like
was
that should-
amazing. It's
my
a great
little
show,
kids-
but
my little kids watch that
iCarly's
show.
in this,
Yeah,
but she doesn't get to do anything. She's the manager.
She indeed is in this film. And then, it culminates with them performing at a battle of the bands. And they had to kind of negotiate some stuff to be able to do that battle of the bands. And what's kind of sweet is even though they would have liked to have won that competition, that wasn't really the point. The point was just to be able to play and for these kids to be able to express themselves through their music. They're at a prep school. They felt kind of
It's
bogged
almost
down with stuffy academics.
that
and
scene that you're talking about is very reminiscent of the Revenge of the Nerds, where they come together to
right.
achieve greatness, something bigger than themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you see the reunion that they had where they're all on stage and playing?
No, I didn't
again?
see that. I didn't
It's
see
amazing.
that. And there's a point during one of the songs they perform at the Battle of the Bands where it was written by the young boy on guitar. It was his song, and the background singers are doing their thing. Just love it, and my son and I will.
And iCarly.
He'll
Watch
watch
for
it.
iCarly.
He'll watch it anytime.
She's
I
awesome.
can't remember that actress.
Miranda Cosgrove.
Miranda Cosgrove.
She's
yeah.
awesome.
Well, she was
And-
also on Drake and Josh.
I never watched that one.
So
Well, I had a younger
was actually
stepdaughter
on,
in that.
she was actually on Drake and Josh before iCarly.
And we won't talk about that. Guess it's time for number one. My number one. Probably, I think everybody by this time has guessed what my number one is. It's the all-time best film in this category. We would circle the name so we could come in from outside to watch this movie.
All right, you're not gonna blow
It's
this.
already.
You're not gonna blow this, are you?
I can't. It's already been on your list.
Yes, indeed. I forgot that you hadn't brought that out yet.
Oh no!
You got this really cool looking Blu-ray.
I'm going to hawk for Scream Factory, Shout Factory, Arrow Video, the almost boutique sellers. You're going to pay more. It's true. You're gonna pay some shekels for this, some pennies.
It's a double disc set though.
But the transfer that they put so much love into these films when they re-release them. The transfer on this movie, I just watched it the other night to reacquaint myself with it. The transfer on this film is exquisite.
Wow.
The colors pop. The sound is great. So into the in-depths. 1984 this comes out.
Pardon me.
We'll shut that off for a
Sometimes the
second.
phone rings before I'm open. Hey.
And just for we're not even gonna edit that out. We're just gonna let it be because
It's life.
I'm sorry, guy that's calling right now. Just come on in.
Yeah.
Walter Hill made this movie, so if that name sounds familiar, he should. He made Trespass. He made another 48 Hours. 48 Hours, Crossroads, a wonderful film that nobody ever talks about. That Jason and I are huge fans of. Extreme Prejudice.
Okay.
That was an HBO staple.
Nice.
And The Warriors.
Same director as
Same
the Warriors.
director as The Warriors.
Well, I'm lame because I had
He-
no idea.
It's kind of made in that, is it in the past, is it in the future, where could it be? The soundtrack is created to push, to drive the
Yeah,
film,
that's a
because the
great
film is about music. It's about a guy saving his ex-girlfriend who's gone on to fame and fortune, and he's kind of not exactly fallen on hard times, but he's kind of not that. He's not big, and there's that what ifs kind of thing in it. He mentioned that the Blasters are the bar band. There's a dancer in that bar as well. Keep your eye on that one. Helped me into puberty. Another rare thing about this movie is the name comes from a Bruce Springsteen song, and they were going to use that song at the end of the film. And somewhere along the line, depending on who you talk to, Bruce Springsteen didn't really want other artists singing his music, understandable. And then they thought it was too dark. It's too dark of a way to end the film. So Jim Steinman is brought in,
Okay. Otherwise known as Meatloaf.
the writer for Meatloaf.
Oh.
The guy who wrote Bat Out of Hell, all those songs, he helped write those songs. He's like the operatic rock and roll guy. He wrote Total Eclipse of the Heart.
Yeah.
So he writes a couple of songs. One of the songs is Tonight is What It Means to Be Young. That's the close. You want a tearjerker? Watch the end of this movie. Watch the look he gives Diane Lane at the end of this film. Tell me that you're not. It's
Well, you might also want to mention Michael Pare. Is that how you say his
Michael
name?
Pare. Who else is in it?
Starred in Eddie and the Cruisers.
Another one that, where's that on my list, man?
And
Eddie
then
lives.
A young
Very young.
Willem Dafoe.
Very young Willem
And-
Dafoe. Willem Dafoe's right hand man. That's where I'm getting.
We'll get to that, but Willem Dafoe's character and
Raven Shattuck.
and the lead character, or the star, they have a scene in the film that we won't spoil. It's a type of a fight scene. We won't spoil it, but that is essential. You have to see the movie to know that.
I
that
don't
scene.
know why this
First
movie
time I saw
wasn't
that, I
huge.
couldn't believe something like that was happening in the movie. But
I
then,
just
yeah,
don't understand
who was? I don't understand either. I tried to
why
turn
it
people
wasn't-
into it.
How do you not watch this movie and just like, can I watch
It's
it
perfect.
again, please? Can I just sit here and just take?
It even
take
has a
some more
kind
of
of a, graphic novel format to how the
almost.
scenes play
And you
out.
see that when you see those wipes that he uses in the film, and then you look at a movie called The Warriors. If you
yeah.
watch the re-released version of that, he uses those, which apparently he wanted to use originally. But
Mm.
I like it without it. But
Yeah,
Lee Ving from the band Fear
indeed.
is Willem Dafoe's right hand man in this, and he's awesome in it.
Yeah.
This is just a classic of 80s
It is one
cinema.
of my favorite films.
Um,
I recommend
the songs are
everybody-
amazing, the acting's amazing. Ry Cooder on guitar, that's laying down great tracks. The blasters. Bill Paxton, thank you, Jason. Thank you so
Good
much.
one.
Bill
That's why
Paxton
Jason's
as the
here.
bartender.
That's why we're three
in
dudes
this.
in a record store,
Yes, not just two
these
dudes.
two
Thank-
stupid dudes.
Thank God he
Yeah.
reminded me of
Yeah,
that, because I
really
blew it
Bill
with "I Love
Paxton.
You, Man" in our Rush episode. So thanks to the Metal Maniac for pointing that out. Bill Paxton has a small role in this, and he kills it. Um,
As
everything
he-
about
as
this
he
movie is
always
just
does.
great. The visuals are awesome. The
good.
way that they play with colors
These side by side.
are amazing. The way that they interdisperse music is amazing.
Indeed.
Stoney Jackson and Michael T. Williamson and
And
a
then
couple
also,
of other guys.
Let's mention that there was actually a big hit song that came
E.G.
out of this.
Daily in a small role.
Big hit song that came out of this was "I Can Dream About You."
Yeah, Dan Hartman.
Dan
That song
Hartman.
was originally written for Hall & Oates. He wrote that song for
Wow.
Hall & Oates, and he sent it
sounds
to
like
them.
that,
and
yeah.
and Daryl Hall said, "Hey man, I'm sorry. We just sent our album to be cut and pressed.
Wow.
We can't fit it on." So he decided to sing it, and
Yeah,
I
that was a
couldn't
big radio
believe
hit.
that guy was singing that song. When I hear the song and I look at the visuals, I can't
Yeah,
quite put
I
that
know.
together. But just everything about this is amazing. The soundtrack is great.
Yeah,
The movie is epic. They don't make movies like this anymore.
they do
That's
not,
number one.
in my
That
opinion.
is, and if you're gonna get a version, go and spend the extra money, get the art, get the transfer on this is incomparable. You gotta have this
That's
version.
awesome, dude. That's awesome.
Number one
All right,
with
man.
a bullet.
My number one, you kind of stole away from me earlier, which is okay.
We've been
Stole
on
your
the same
number one,
page
too.
for
Yeah,
quite a bit
I
of
know.
this.
I know. And this is a twofer. I bundled these two, which you kind of talked about.
That means you're gonna have a copy of something I
both
don't have.
copies. B Street
I
and
need
Breakin'.
I need Breakin'. I need Breakin' 2 as well.
I put these at my number one because I am who I am today, in a large part due to these movies. At the time, I fell in love with early hip hop and breakdancing. 1984 was just a great year for me. I kind of wish I could stay in 1984 sometimes. Yeah, it just felt like good times. I saw both of these at the Eureka Theater when they came out.
Man, that was the place to be.
Like you said, Beat Street was a little bit more legit to the early hip hop movement in New York.
Well, this is kind of a take on Romeo and Juliet, where this is kind of just an urban, like, what are we
Okay,
gonna
well,
do with our lives?
I
Kind
don't
of.
care about that part of it. I don't care about that part of it. I mean, this was what was going on in the West Coast after the
And Ozone
influence
Shop
of
Dude.
early hip hop had moved and affected people on the West Coast who already had their own dance styles. So Beat Street's more about breaking, breakdancing, breaking.
creating the art.
This is called breaking, but it's more about popping and locking.
Do you know who the famous rap legend who got his debut in
That would be
breaking?
Ice-T.
Ice-T, phenomenal.
Actually has kind of a big element in the film, providing the live music that's happening at the Radiotron, where they would go and have their dance battles. So anyway, number one for me, because it was so big in my life, they're dance movies in a lot of ways. Beat Street more about the overall culture of hip hop, all the elements, graffiti writing, dancing, MCing. Breakin's more, it's a dance film, but you can't have that without the music.
You can't.
And
Huge.
both of these reflect music that influenced hip hop for all time.
I don't
And
know that we'd have 6 in the morning from Ice-T if we don't have him in this movie.
A lot of
It
people
was
thought it was
kind of huge.
kinda
Jean-Claude
crazy
Van
that
Damme.
he's got that cameo in there. This is not the Ice-T of the
SVU.
the beginning of the gangster rap movement. He's not the body count Ice-T, but
I
he's
am
dope. He's cool. in it, man.
horribly, pathetically white, and I cannot dance to save my life. And these movies made me want to.
Yeah.
I think I got as far as trying the caterpillar or the worm in my
Yeah.
hallway in my house, and that ended horribly, and I never tried again.
I don't know if I could dance now, but as a 9-10-year-old kid, that's all I wanted to do for a while. And these were hugely influential on that. I probably was terrible. I probably looked like a little.
Well, I'm not
Weirdo.
dancing on the ceiling.
No. I was dancing on the floor. I was mostly popping.
Fall around. I think that's why maybe I get into metal so much, because anybody can mosh
Yeah.
or pogo or whatever. It's a great pick. It's a great
So
pick.
I hate to be anticlimactic on my number one pick,
I
but
think we were both a little
It's just-
anticlimactic.
just
They were already,
huge films.
which is why I kind of love doing this, is because we kind of get a peek behind the curtains of each
Yeah.
other's brain pans, but we're kind of similar in ways, even though we
That's why
have
we're doing
different.
this. That's why we started talking about doing this. Sometimes we diverge greatly, like Wes Anderson and
Anderson.
Manowar are both
Yeah.
brilliant artists, and this guy he can't fathom that.
I can't. I will listen. I'll tell you what. I will acquiesce a little bit. I will listen to Manowar far before I ever watch a Wes Anderson film on purpose, because that's going to waste 2 hours of my life. At least Manowar's done in 3 minutes.
Sometime, not on camera, we will have a sit down, and I will explain to you what you're missing about Wes Anderson films.
I'll explain to you why The Commitments is a racist movie.
Well, I never even said anything about The Commitments. I just mentioned that.
Would you like to have your name shouted out on this show? You probably would. Would you like to be like Amber Keys in
We'll do
Solo
it.
Sport?
We'll shout you out.
Would you like to be like the Jason, the Metal Maniac, in Power and Fitness, Strength and Honor, Combat, women's self-defense classes that he puts on because he's a brilliant, amazing human being? Would you like to be like that? Would you like to be like Visual Tattoo and have your name put on for the world to hear? If you would, come down and talk to this guy. Come down and pick his brain. Come down and talk about his movies. Talk about what you would have put on this list. And while you're here, pick some
Look
things
around.
you'd like to see. If
Look
you
around.
can't find something in the store, you're not looking hard enough.
There's all kinds of stuff.
I have
here.
to do 5 things that you'd want to pick in the store, and I'm looking around at the walls, seeing a T-Rex album, seeing Kiss, seeing a Tammy Faye Baker record from when she
It's
was
still
actually
sealed.
quite attractive.
That's a still sealed can.
It's hard to pick only 5 things, but I'm gonna do my best. What other record store are you gonna come in and get?
Caligula.
The funniest thing about this movie, and it's not a comedy, but you gotta own it like it is a comedy. Helen Mirren is in this movie. Roddy McDowall is in this movie.
Yeah.
Neither one of them knew what the movie was gonna be like. All of the extra stuff this movie is infamous for was put in post-production.
Wow.
So they didn't
Okay.
have any idea
Really?
that this was gonna
I
be
did not know
basically a porno flick. My all-time favorite punk band, Fugazi. This is actually a military term. Fugazi stands for fucked up, got ambushed, zipped in. I think it's a phrase from the Vietnam War.
Wow.
So this is the best. This is the most DIY punk band ever. They had an opportunity to get on a big label. They never did. They never put out swag. They never charged more than like $8 or $10 to go to a show. Never charged more than like $5 for any of their stuff. These guys are
Sorry to say
unbelievably amazing.
their new vinyl albums cost more than they used to.
Yeah,
but,
a little bit, right?
They used to have stickers on their stuff that said don't sell for more than X amount.
Parliament. It cannot go wrong with the brilliance of Parliament. George Clinton. Absolutely
Funkadelic
amazing.
Parliament. The
Since we're talking about
funkiest music ever made.
musical movies that have to do with music, I didn't put Suburbia on my list. I could have. Early Flea, another one. There are 3 versions or 3 eras of
volumes.
3 volumes.
This is the second one, the Metal Years.
This is the best one by far. Come down and grab this.
I don't know about
I
that.
love this.
I love this film, but the first one, Decline
The
of the
first
Western
one.
Civilization Part 1, I almost included that in here. I
It
felt
was
I was
close,
getting
it
too
was
heavy on
close.
that kind of documentary thing, but hugely influential film. And
Penelope Spheris, who wrote one of my absolute favorite movies that never gets any love, Summer Camp Nightmare.
oh, okay.
Love that movie. Fear's on the soundtrack of that film.
She also did Dudes, which
Yeah, she
is-
did
could've been
Wayne's
her-
World, I
Wayne's
believe,
World,
right?
that's probably her biggest.
I tried to do something out of the ordinary when I throw you my picks, and I like to do a little shout outs to the Metal Maniac, because only we get to see his reactions behind the scenes, and that's awesome. For those of you that don't know the Metal Maniac, he's got such a soft side that you wouldn't believe. I won't out him for all the crazy stuff he gets into, but one of the things that he absolutely loves.
Yeah.
How do you not
Lindsey
want to
Buckingham.
come here and get this record? Such a phenomenally underrated musician,
Yeah.
much in the way of like a Richie Kotzen, who plays his guitar without a pick. He kind of uses his fingers and he just absolutely rips. This is a great coke-fueled 80s record of his.
Was he still doing coke at that time? Probably.
Oh, he's got to have been this. But this is a great record. Come down and pick this up. You got it for us.
Man. All right. This is 2 DVDs by Billy Connolly, just an underrated comedian, Irish, Scottish comedian. Can't remember which country he's native to, but he had a run on 1 or 2 television shows. He has a cool character in Boondock Saints, that film, but his stand-up is amazing and underrated. He doesn't get talked about as a stand-up comedian, but great storyteller type stand-up comedian. He's hilarious. A highly recommended film in my opinion, The Witch. Just got a physical copy of this in today, so somebody should be coming to grab this soon.
I just watched his new movie, The Lighthouse.
Yeah, I haven't seen The Lighthouse yet.
What that
I'm
thing's
about to get to it. I like this director a lot. I like the studio that it comes from, A24. They've been putting out
They put out
really good
great,
stuff.
great movies.
Just it's
That's a really good movie.
It's
I really
witchy.
like that movie.
It's spooky. It's considered in the horror genre, but it's not horrific. It's more startling and unsettling, and everyone should check that out.
It's a slow burn of atmospheric tension. It's awesome.
Indeed.
Oh, I see something down there.
A nice, very clean copy of a record that I think any jazz fan, anybody that likes guitar, heavy guitar work, should check out. Mahavishnu Orchestra, John McLaughlin, almost kind of like the Jimi Hendrix of fusion jazz, John McLaughlin. Ridiculously talented guitar player. And this also has drumming by Billy Cobham. So it's on fire. That album is on fire. This is a double LP by Judas Priest that just shouldn't had been sitting in here as long as it has. I think it's been here for a few weeks now.
I think I brought that in for you.
Well, you know, you didn't bring this one in. You brought me another copy, which did sell.
Right on.
So another one came.
Thank
in.
you,
So,
whoever
yeah,
bought that. That was for
some
me.
cool person got Greg's copy of that. This isn't the most essential Judas Priest record, but it has their first two albums kind of mashed together. And they did it probably to try to expose Judas Priest at the time. So
This is,
you could buy it as a
hit from-
completist. If you're a completist, you want this in your collection, or if you just don't have any early Judas Priest.
Oh, there it is. You
Come
can't
and
see
get
it, but
this.
it's Gold Records, little known Gold Records. And it ties into what we were talking about today because the track Dreamer Deceiver
Yes,
is
indeed.
where they got that title for the movie Dream Deceivers
Yeah.
from. This is a great record, and you've got to love the album art on
Oh
this.
man, as a
It's amazing.
completist, this is different from any of their other album art. The first album, Rockarola,
Well, they weren't
has
getting a ton of traction in those early
probably not. Yeah.
albums.
So this was a
they
way
were-
to try to break them in
Yeah.
other markets.
This
and,
is a wonderful release.
it's
I love it.
awesome. And finally, this is a collectible item. This is the Cure's first UK album, their first record, and it's on the record label that they were originally on before they got a major label deal, Fiction Records. This is Fiction 01. This is an original Cure record in amazing shape, and this is
Hall
on
of
the wall.
Fame inducted
Yeah,
members.
indeed. Brilliant band.
I really like the Cure. I really. I mean, you probably know the era of the Cure that I'm really, that whole disintegration.
Yeah, I would imagine that. Yeah.
The bass playing on that album is just amazing.
Beautiful.
It's so.
Some people would consider that their greatest work. Not all of their fans would,
Maybe
would
we
feel that way,
can
but
deep dive that for another episode.
Cure is a good band to deep dive. Anyway, that's going to be up on the wall.
Any
Somebody out there, one of you out there, needs this in your collection.
any final thoughts before?
Well, I had a lot of fun with this topic.
This was a great.
I'm trying to loosen up and get more.
You were on it today.
Get better
You
energy here.
you made up for the fact that
Project
I was
my
kind
voice a
of
little
I was
more.
off a little today. And
This
you
guy
just
talks over
killed
me
it.
real easily because I have a soft voice and I don't project very well. So
That's why we're friends.
I got to learn to try to compete against his bravado that he has. But no, I was excited about this movie and film episode. Two great things that go well together.
And now we get to decide what we want to do for our next episode.
It's going to be tough.
Hopefully, we'll be able to give you 2 a week, which would be nice.
And
to
also
talk about.
on our YouTube page, you can put in the comments things you'd like us to talk about.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. We might not get to them right away, but we'll consider.
Come
anything.
in, support physical media, support local businesses, support your independent record stores. Talk to these guys. Talk to places like People's Records in Arcata, and go down to the Bay to like Amoeba and Rasputin Records.
You
These
should
are the
always have
guys
a connection with your local record store.
that really facilitate the love that you have to you know, we get excited when we find these little nuggets of stuff we've been looking for forever.
And we don't do this just to make money. We need to have money coming in to keep doing this. It's basically the deal. But we're just passionate about music and the culture and talking to people, doing it.
I can't
person.
sing, I can't dance, I can't play an instrument. So what do I like to do to create? I like to talk about people that can.
Heck yeah.
So hopefully we'll be able to come around a lot more. So
Yeah. Thanks
from
for tuning in
from
to
the Metal
another
Maniac,
episode.
from this guy, we're out of here. Keep physical media alive. We'll see you next time.
Yeah.
That was a little clunky, but I liked it. It was fun.
You're fine, dude.
I kept looking at my stack and being like, fuck, I forgot.